Bluegrass Jamalong is proud to be sponsored by Collins Guitars and Mandolins, each and every one built from the sound up in Austin, Texas. Bluegrass Jamalong is also brought to you by Token Picks, individually machined guitar and mandolin picks to bring out the best in you and your instrument.
The real energy was, again, being able to release this new stuff from Doc and Tony, but having, again, kind of the lineage concept where, you know, instead of people that were essentially my heroes, now more peers and pals, if you will, on a new batch of duets. The challenge has always been kind of where I stop. You know, if you looked at my ultimate list, you know, I could make versions of this record every year for the next decade and still not be done with people that I'd love to just sit and record a song with.
Hi, this is Matt, and you're listening to Bluegrass Jamalong, the podcast for anyone and everyone who loves bluegrass. Hey everybody, welcome back to Bluegrass Jamalong. This week my guest is Bryan Sutton, who has been on the podcast a few times, a good friend of this show. He's on to talk about a new project. Now, 20 years ago, Bryan released a wonderful record called Not Too Far From the Tree, which is a bunch of duets with some of his kind of favourite pickers, mentors, friends, people like Norman Blake, Jerry Douglas, Russ Barenberg, Tony Rice, Ricky Skaggs, Doc Watson. Wonderful, wonderful record. And Whiskey Before Breakfast from that record won a Grammy with Doc. And I've chatted to Bryan a little bit about that before, but this new project not only celebrates the 20th anniversary of that, but it builds on it as well. It's called From Roots to Branches, and it's a bunch of new duets with people like Trey Hensley, Billy Strings, Chris Eldridge, like a new generation of pickers. But there's also a couple of unreleased tracks from the original record, one with Doc Watson, one with Tony Rice. They're really cool as well. And then there's a kind of thread of bringing people in from beyond the bluegrass flat-picking genre. People like Joe Bonamassa and Tommy Emmanuel are in there. Really cool. Wonderful duet with Sierra Hull playing guitar on there as well. It's a really great project. Several of the tracks have come out now on the streaming services. Lots of them are out there to listen to now, and there's still a few more to come. And the whole thing has been bundled up and put out as a kind of album in August. And it was just great fun to get to chat to Bryan about this. He is just an astonishing musician and real sort of thinker about all of this stuff and the why of all of it, and, you know, what matters to him as a musician and what's important at this point, and all of that stuff is just really interesting. And fascinating to chat about him as a player now compared to 20 years ago when he was, you know, maybe the younger guy compared to the people he was playing with, and now maybe he's more in that mentor sort of figure, and just a really fascinating conversation. I'm going to stick some links in the show notes where you can go and hear this stuff that's out already, but also do listen to the full project when it is out in August. Yeah, really cool. I'll also stick a link in the show notes to a couple of the chats that I've had with Bryan in case you missed any of those, because they have been fascinating too. All the stuff, as usual, is on the website, bluegrassjamalong.com. If you want to go and find all the other interviews, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of them, and some of them are just fascinating things. Also, there's a whole bunch of backing tracks if you want to jam along, learn your fiddle tunes. They're all listed on there as well. And yeah, a bunch of chord charts for those. But that is it. I am going to leave you alone and let you listen to my conversation with Bryan Sutton about his wonderful record From Roots to Branches. Bryan Sutton, welcome back to Bluegrass Jamalong. It's a joy to see you as always.
Yeah, Matt, it's been a while, and nice to see you and hear you.
And this is a fun one. Not only are we talking about a great new record you've got coming out, we're also talking about a great record you've had out for a while now. And I think Not Too Far From the Tree is a favourite record of a lot of people. And it's just turned 20. And the new record From Roots to Branches is very much kind of an extension of that and a build on that and kind of a reflection on where you've come since that. So I'm really looking forward to it.
Well, thank you. And yeah, the idea probably from a few years after the first one was made, sort of been in my head for a long time. Like, I know that, that record represented heroes of mine, less about peers and things like that. And more, I mean, obviously Doc Watson and Tony Rice and Earl Scruggs and George Shuffler, Norman Blake. So just an opportunity to record anything with those guys, but sort of pay tribute to, just honor those heroes of mine, and certainly all of us. But that was the basic concept, is to turn around and look at more, again, peers. And then the longer I waited, the older I got, and more younger players came on the scene. So, there was plenty to choose from.
Yeah, and that first record, kind of very much about like just you in a room with those people, and it recorded a little bit all over the place by the sound of it. You put your stuff in the car, went to where people were. Some people came to you, or just an album recorded on the road. Yeah,
that was part of the concept of the first one, was to put together a little mobile rig of a couple of microphones and a recording device and travel. And so, I went to North Carolina and into George Shuffler's living room and down to Norman Blake's house at Rising Fawn. And was able to, it was not necessarily Doc Watson's house, but a hotel room in Colorado where he and I both happened to be, and it worked out. But, there was, at the point I was that time, I was thinking it felt right to sort of, even with all this mobility, to have the same rig, the same mics, the same preamps and things like that. I don't know if that really matters, but it felt important to me at the time.
It's funny, isn't it? Somehow those things do matter. You don't need anybody else to know that that's the case, but it's just nice to, connections are always a nice thing. Yeah. And this record, much more recorded at home by the sound of it. Yeah,
it was maybe, same gear, but more people came to me in this one. I think I did a little bit of traveling around Nashville, depending on who's schedules of different people. But yeah, I've got a setup at the house, where I used to live, and some good mics and good gear, and that felt right too, to kind of have the same space involved in at least the majority of it.
Yeah, it feels like there's a lovely extension of that. I mean, just like you talk about that original set of tunes, and a lot of those people were your heroes and your mentors and your friends. But this, not only the extension of kind of moving into some of the younger pickers, but also bringing people in from a bit further out from the tree, if we want to go with a metaphor. Reaching out to other genres and some of the other people that you've been inspired by.
Yeah, well, that was, again, thinking about what I could record and who I could record with on this particular project. A lot has changed in my career in the last 20 years. And being in Nashville for that period of time and doing a lot more work with a lot more of those kind of folks, Nashville Music Row folks, and then just sort of being around the music world outside of Bluegrass and just creating friendships with people like Tommy Emmanuel, or, being able to be around guys like Joe Bonamassa. And it just felt like it was a little more of an extension of where I am as a player, less of kind of a newer bluegrasser to the scene and paying tribute to Doc Watson and Tony, and more of a guy that's been around a while and just, for me at least, seeing a certain value in getting outside of that sort of, I won't say predictable, but more of what I could have done of just sort of continue to play fiddle tunes with great players, which would have been really just fine. But also the fact that I've been singing a lot more the last few years, and I still don't really consider myself like a vocalist necessarily, but it's something else that I feel like I can do. And it also provided a lot of great opportunity for other types of songs on this record beyond, again, just flat picking fiddle tunes, which that was of interest to me, to be able to sing with people and have great singers like Molly Tuttle, be able to do what they do.
Yeah, and there's the people on this record. So there's Molly, but also, Billy Strings, Trey Hensley, that are every bit as good a singer as they are a picker. And yeah. I wouldn't say it gets forgotten about sometimes, but it's a great thing to be able to celebrate.
Well, I think that in the wake of Tony Rice, there was a lot of players like me that sort of came along and were very much guitar students. And I'd always sung my whole life, but just never put a lot of energy into it until, the last 10 years or so. But yes, people like that, like Trey Hensley, that just have come out of the gate, and Billy and Molly, and think of others that are just, more of that player singer kind of dual threat. It does, yeah. It's more of a common thing these days.
Yeah, and it is, and I guess it is one of those things that maybe people don't think about singing in the same, like you pick up an instrument, you have to learn where everything is, whereas singing is something you can naturally do. And it sometimes takes some impetus to. I remember reading an interview with Chris Thiele only 3 or 4 years ago, and him saying that he'd never really thought that much about his vocals, because he'd spent so much time thinking about the instrument.
Yeah, I mean, here's another one that I was just thinking about him, that, as far as musicians that I was around 20 years ago, like Chris, and obviously he was singing with Nickel Creek back then, but yeah, it was like that was sort of a secondary thing. And I think because of Chris, as such a influential figure in acoustic music, who certainly over those, last couple of decades has made as much of a sort of an impact on the music because of his writing and singing and playing as well, and that trickles through, inevitably, to where, a lot of the younger players that I continue to kind of see and work with, a lot of them are singing these days. It's sort of, maybe more normalized again, which is good. I think, 50 years ago, it was way more normal, for guitar players to sing, especially in bluegrass, where it's from the Lester Flatt sort of archetype, where that was the lead singer in the bluegrass band was the guitar player.
Well, and just looking back at this list of kind of people on the first record, and you think about Tony and Norman, but also like somebody like Earl did a lot of singing in his time. Ricky Skaggs, great singer. There's a grand tradition of that, and it makes for a really interesting listen having some vocals in there, because there's also a lot of fun had with those vocals. There's a couple of the tracks on there that are kind of some of the kind of most light-hearted moments on this record, but all of it is pretty. I mean, just it feels like it's a very conversational record, which is only natural, but it's one of the things that you notice most.
Yeah. Well, I guess for me, that you hit it there. Just realizing what I'm trying to accomplish with this record is less about kind of two guitar players going at each other and more about two friends just sharing a song. And vocal tunes, not that instrumental tunes can't do that. And certainly with people like, Jake Stargell and Jake Workman, there's plenty of opportunity for that. But just because of Trey Hensley and his voice, and why not? And it's just, it feels more natural, especially for that kind of relationship, for us to do, a song with lyrics and sing. And so, I just think that's also, again, part of it feels most right for me to have songs like that on this record. And even so, I'm still a guitar player first, but that's part of my own evolution too. Again, as a singer and writing songs more, that, I want to hear more singing and more just songs. I would get bored with a record of just fiddle tunes.
We'll be right back with you just after this. The long-awaited Hill Country series from Collings Guitars represents a new voice in their acoustic lineup. Rooted deep in the bluegrass world, these new Dreadnought and OM models feature a strong fundamental tone with a dry, warm and woody character that's sure to catch the attention of players who hold the vintage instruments of the 30s in their highest regard. Watch world-class pickers Jake Workman, Kenny Smith and Bob Minner perform with new Hill Country instruments on the Collings Guitars YouTube channel, and learn more at collingsguitars.com. Founded in Petaluma, California, and born of a love for music, Token has developed a unique approach to making picks. Individually machined from premium materials like Ultem, Peak, and compression moulded Taulon, Token picks are designed to bring clarity, speed, and tone to your playing. Used by top artists like Jake Workman, Andy Falco, and Trey Hensley, Token picks are fast becoming a bluegrass favourite. Follow on Instagram at TokenMade and learn more at tokenmade.com. And I think one of the things I found fascinating about this record, because I know it's been on your mind for quite a while to make this record. And I'm curious as to whether kind of how you first envisioned it compared to how it ended up was any different. Like when you first started thinking about this as a project, like what was knocking around in your head at that point?
Well, one of the main things that happened, that where it sort of wouldn't leave my head, was, I don't remember the year, maybe within 8 to 10 years after the release of the first record, going back through these digital tapes that I'd used to capture the first stuff and transferring that to fully digital hard drive, Pro Tools, living in a hard drive space, and just listening to just sort of the raw data that was captured and discovering all this stuff and talking about complete songs with Doc and Tony that I'd totally forgotten about. Had no remembrance. I mean, I remember being in the room with them, and we didn't just do 1 or 2 songs, but it was just kind of a casual sit down and just play through some tunes. And I knew back then there was a goal to get, like with Doc, it was Whiskey Before Breakfast, and we've got multiple takes of that. But yeah, just so in this, literally sitting in my home studio, just discovering this stuff that had been, I don't want to say lost, but just totally forgotten about. So I felt like, okay, there's an opportunity to either kind of do a follow-up or sort of an EP part 2 of Not Too Far From the Tree with this. It came down to Doc and Tony as far as new material that I could use, but also, again, how could that connect with a totally new batch? So for me, it was, the real energy was, again, being able to release this new stuff from Doc and Tony, but having, again, kind of the lineage concept where, instead of people that were essentially my heroes, now more peers and pals, if you will, on a new batch of duets. The challenge has always been kind of where I stop.
Sure.
If you looked at my ultimate list, I could make versions of this record every year for the next decade and still not be done with people that I'd love to just sit and record a song with. So that will continue to be the challenge. And for a while it kind of kept me from doing it because I didn't want to either, not necessarily make anybody mad, but just didn't make anybody feel left out. And because it just seemed like such a challenge to figure out, because I do have to stop somewhere. At least for, within what's called maybe this first batch, maybe there's a part 3 that'll follow up. That would be really easy to do. We'll just have to see how it works. But anyway, the point is like, that was how it kind of wrestled around in my mind for a lot of years of just, I could do this and I'd use these people, but then what about this person? And I don't know about this. And eventually I just had to get over that. And part of it for me too was, finally getting a home studio that I felt like was suitable for this. I've always had kind of a space at home that I've called a studio, but had some remodeling done and felt like I had a nice spot that somebody could come over and we could sit and do this. So it just kind of built from that sort of energy. And so, combinations of the Doc and the Tony, and just kind of getting over myself a little bit as far as what I wanted to do that was new and who I wanted to do it with, and just go. And, I live here in Nashville, so it was easy to kind of get off the ground with people that were in town. I started this kind of right around the Christmas break, I guess 2023 maybe. And just, started making calls and sending emails and just having, getting people while they were in town and just kind of doing a little bit at a time, and just sort of built from there.
And it is lovely having that kind of connection of having some more Doc and some more Tony. And also, just since that first record, we don't have Doc and we don't have Tony. So any opportunity to have a little bit more of either of them that is new is a beautiful thing. But it's a lovely connection between the two records as well. Yeah.
And not to keep harping on the vocal aspect of this, but the fact that one of the tunes from Doc was Working Man Blues that I had no idea he was going to sing. And I felt lucky that I had a mic placed close enough to his voice to be able to hear it. But just the fact that he did that kind of opened up the door of like, oh yeah, I should do more vocal tunes. And it came from that discovery of, Doc playing that. That was the last thing we sat in a room and he just launched into it. And I had no idea it was coming, but I'm glad he did.
And there's a lovely kind of synchronicity between that and then hearing you and Trey sing It Takes All Kinds to Make a World, because you've got kind of, particularly on Whiskey Before Breakfast, but also on the new record, Working Man Blues, kind of Doc like talking to you, telling you when to take a break, kind of comment in the way that Doc does, just kind of chipping in and, and there's that same element between you and Trey on the track on this record, and it's lovely to hear it kind of like moving across. It's almost like an audio representation of your shift from being the mentee to more of the mentor figure in some ways, and it's a lovely little moment when I first heard that track.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, I mean, that's part of the Doc Watson lesson beyond just here's how he would interpret a fiddle tune. It's just he never quite had, or the things weren't so precious to where it was like, okay, we got to be quiet and record this song or perform this song. And it was just, it was just always in the moment. And, oh, by the way, why don't you play this? And let's play it again. Let's all play it. That was something I've always taken from Doc is it's this wonderful blend of like caring and preparing, but also just letting a moment be a moment and making the most of whoever's there doing whatever they're doing. And, again, I think in a duet format, that's again, what I'm trying to accomplish with these things is just capture, I've called it sort of a musical conversation where I would hope that somebody listening hears more of a relationship between two people than they do just here's a bunch of notes on an instrument or words being sung.
Yeah, and you definitely do. There's something beautifully informal about it, and it's something that, as a fan of bluegrass music, like from some of the tapes that are out there and some of the things you see on social media and some of the bits on YouTube, it's really obvious that some amazing music happens when pickers just get together. Like it's not necessarily in a studio, and it's not necessarily planned, and you get to occasionally listen in, and this feels like that. Like I'm sort of sat in the corner of your living room while friends pass through and pick a tune with you.
Yeah, it's definitely that. It's definitely. I mean, I would get multiple takes of some of these songs and do a little bit of editing here and there, but I like keeping these things as live as possible, and as there's still like I did a tune with Zeb Snyder and Sally Ann, and we sat down and said, what do you want to play? I don't know. What do you want to play? And it's as casual as that. There would be other situations where I might think about, okay, this kind of song with this kind of person, and but never really an arrangement, never anything till we sat there and it's just sort of feel what the guitar sounded like together. And that's, I don't know how intent I was. Well, I knew that I didn't want it to be too thought about. I wanted things to feel casual and comfortable. And so, that sweet spot of, once we're there, I can think like a record producer and, okay, this is what is going to make a good shape and sound like an arrangement. But most of that's worked out in real time.
And it must be tricky to get maybe it's not, but my perception is that it's tricky that if you're the one responsible for setting up the mics and getting the tone and the balance and kind of have your producer's head on, and then to just also, as soon as you start playing, to forget all that and just be there, Yeah,
it is challenging. I've listened to some other interviews with like actors who have become directors who also act and direct at the same time. And I've done enough of that in Nashville too, where I've been producing or leading something or, been part of the team, but also playing. And so I've got enough experience to kind of understand what that feels like. So it wasn't anything completely new, but it is kind of weird. And I knew going back to, also being an engineer or wearing that hat, I don't call myself an engineer, but enough of an engineer hat, going back and listening to some of the things like, oh gosh, I should have noticed that this person moved, 6 inches off the mic during this take. A dedicated engineer would have noticed this kind of stuff, but there's usually a workaround. But yeah, and maybe that adds to the sort of homegrown organic listenable, comfortable quality of it. The fact that it's just not so perfect. I don't know that a casual listener would notice the stuff that I might notice. But still, again, just in the imperfection of it, I find that that's where, to me, like the more listenable stuff is. I guess I had that experience, years and years ago making a record where the first thing I did, I was just so hyper focused and micromanaged everything. And I just can't listen to that stuff these days. But when I got over myself and started trying to experiment more with just capturing things and going for more live performances, if I listen back to that stuff, it feels more listenable to me. And so I'm still trying to sort of just believe that idea of just, I'm never going to make anything perfect, and the effort of perfection is just futile anyway. So there's something to be said about just going with what is there. Again, that Doc cut of Working Man Blues. It's like there was no planning. There was no. I mean, the mics were in the right. They were there, but they weren't in the right place. But it still works. I mean, a good performance, the right person doing the right thing, that still translates through all the stuff that could go wrong. And again, somebody on the inside might know it, but most people are just there to hear and feel the emotion and hear the performance.
And that's the thing, isn't it? If the energy is there, you can forgive pretty much anything else. If you're feeling that.
Yeah, that's the lesson. And it's hard as when you're producing engineering, playing, there is a tendency to micromanage, but you just have to let that go.
One of my kind of favorite examples of that kind of balance is listen to Bruce Springsteen's Seeger Sessions record. And you've seen the videos of how it's recorded. The horns are set up somewhere down the hall. Everybody else is in the living room. He's just shouting out, "Who wants to take a break? Right, we're going to move to B now." And he's just telling them what to play and when. But it's just the most joyous thing. And it could be awful, but it's not, because they're all committed. They're all there. And when Bruce says, "Off we go to another key," off they all go.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's all folk music at the end of the day. If it's not, sort of prepared symphonic classical music, you can go pay to see that. Extremely rehearsed stuff. But that's what we love about folk music, is that it's so human. And there has been a lot of sort of infiltration or kind of monkeying with that idea. But when it's raw and real, it's kind of undeniable. And I love that. I work on a lot of, very sort of planned and gridded and produced music. And so it's, I always loved having a balance in my life of music that was far from that. So again, I guess that's what I tried. And the stuff that I actually make, try not to be so precious about every little thing, while also being precious about every little thing.
Well, this is entirely the job of being a human being, isn't it? It's knowing when to let go and how to let go.
Yeah.
And I was delighted and we'll talk about this maybe in a bit, about how these songs have come out and how the album has made its way out into the world. But I was delighted as these tracks came out to see a track with Sierra Hull, and I was doubly delighted to hear her play guitar on it, because Sierra is an extraordinary singer, an extraordinary songwriter, an extraordinary mandolin player, but she's also one of my favourite guitar players, and I don't get to hear her play enough guitar.
That was one of the first times that I kind of paid attention to her. When she was a kid, her dad or somebody posted a YouTube video of her just kind of playing guitar, jamming it on something in their house, and just so mature sounding and strong. And like just anytime we've been together, same way. I love to hear her play the guitar. I love the stuff that she plays on her current stuff or original music.
And I love the fact that it's Grandfather's Clock. It's one of those kind of slightly old-fashioned tunes, a bit like Old Spinning Wheel or something that you did on the first record with David Greer. It's a really simple tune that's easy to pass over, I think, but sometimes those have the most opportunity for a little bit of quiet beauty in them.
Well, I'm always going to be a fan, especially for this kind of record, strong melodies. And again, I'm a fan of the more simple sounding melodies. Spinning Wheel's a great example. Yeah, I've always loved Grandfather's Clock. Tunes that are played oftentimes as instrumentals, but sort of come from the vocal world originally. And but yeah, just the fact that it's just a strong melody, that was the big connection for me. It's easy to lose the melody in a lot of fiddle tunes, a lot of notey fiddle tunes. But when it's singable like that, even a fiddle tune can be singable, but some of them can get kind of notey. But just when right out of the gate, it's such a recognizable, strong, noticeable melody. That's what I'm going for.
And I loved reading that you played your grandfather's guitar on that.
Yeah, 1942, single 017, Martin. And Sierra played another 1935 single 018 that I own. So they're, I kind of leave them beside each other in my closet, so they know each other well. They spend a lot of time together, so it was nice to use those instruments. And that was the other thing, like on this project, to try to use other guitars, not just everybody playing dreadnoughts. So like the one I did with Tommy, we're both playing 0018s, and we get deep into the guitar nerd world here, but I take that into consideration too, as far as the voices and what the song is and what guitars are going to support that tune. I did a song with Andrew Marlin, and real Norman Blake inspired, and so I have a pre-war Norman Blake model and slot head mahogany dreadnought, and just again deep into the guitar nerd, but I love that stuff. To me, it all is part of the soup, all those little factors.
Yeah, and I don't know if I remember this wrong, but my memory is that you played the same guitar on all the tracks on Not Too Far From the Tree.
Yeah, again, that was part of the style. There was the same gear, the same mics. I played the same guitar. Again, my thinking was, so if you listen to this whole thing, you're going to hear lots of different personalities, and each of the duet partners would be playing whatever instrument they're playing, but I would always have the same instrument. And on this one, again, just sort of didn't feel so or as inclined to maintain that. I mean, my D28 is probably featured more on this new batch than anything, but still I wanted to play other things, just because, again, that's been part of my evolution. Is I enjoy playing lots of other guitars and just having other sounds. Again, the tune with Trey, for whatever reason, it just felt right to use resonators, just a little more honk, a little more country twang. He and I find a lot of common ground in that world too, beyond bluegrass. And then you've got Devil Went Down to Deep Gap, which completely blows everything out of the water, template wise.
Well, I was about to ask you about that track, because that sort of takes it to whole other levels. There's so many things to love about it, and it made me smile, because like I've known for a while that you are a big fan of kind of rock, big Eddie Van Halen fan. Billy is obviously, and I know Trey Hensley, when I interviewed him, said when he first met Billy, they sort of joked about forming a Black Sabbath tribute band, and the thread of kind of hard rock and metal that runs through the bluegrass flat picking community is pretty strong, isn't it?
It is. I feel that there's a real similar energy and kind of a sink your teeth into it, as far as the concept of like drive and acoustic music, bluegrass, and even, like the sort of Django Reinhardt gypsy swing, just a real sort of, I don't want to say muscle, but just a visceral kind of dig in. And, that's what I feel when I listen to Iron Maiden, Black Sabbath, and Metallica. And yeah, Billy and I, same kind of thing. We're always talking about that stuff. Or have you heard this new band, or share, I'll send him new songs, and him, me, and part of like him, and part of as part of this record, this at least this current collection, knowing that he and I have a whole record of duet acoustic playing. It wasn't out at the time that we made that song, but just knowing that was going to be out, a whole 2 hours collection of he and I playing acoustic guitars. I didn't want something that was just kind of, an extension of that. And wanting to do something that would offer an opportunity to play electric guitar. Is there some way that on essentially a duets acoustic guitar record, can he and I play acoustic and electric, and what would make that happen? And so that's where my brain went to. The Devil Went Down to Georgia as, here's a piece of music that kind of straddles some different styles within itself, and maybe there's something possible there. And so anyway, it kind of went from there, and I built a little demo at home and gave it to him, and he's like, okay, sure. Why not?
And it's, and there's double kick drums on there. There's, you got you take that idea to its fullest conclusion, don't you?
Well, there's no reason to hold back. And maybe I do want people to laugh at it and take it seriously, but not too seriously. And I've listened to, was it Andy Samberg, great Saturday Night Live actor and writer and actor in general, but did a lot of like comedy music. And I remember him in an interview, and I'm also thinking about Red Knuckles and the Trailblazers too, where it's like part of what makes it impactful and not just funny, but just interesting as kind of a parody, if you will, or whatever. It's just the fact that, you really do it, you do it well, you really commit to it, and don't hold back. Don't think of this as just like, well, let's just be some bluegrassers that want to dip their toe into the rock and roll world. No, let's put 3 tracks of bass on it, and double kick drum, and I'll get the heaviest guitar rig I can find, and let's just go as much as we can into it and really commit. And that's why I like the animation idea too. Like it just doesn't hold back. And again, I'm not saying it's going to change the world or anything, but just what I like seeing come out of it. It was just it felt committed. And when I played it for like legit, heavy metal aficionados that I work with, they're like, "Oh yeah, those drum sounds are right." And the guy that mixed it too is a friend of mine named Jeff Balding here in Nashville, who's worked on like Megadeth records. But I also record acoustic country music with him as well, and so I knew he was kind of perfect for it, to be able to get both sides of that song sounding as legitimate and as clear and strong as possible.
Yeah, and it's funny because you mentioned Iron Maiden earlier, and that's exactly what I get from Iron Maiden, is that like they take their craft extremely seriously, and the detail and the precision and just the sheer kind of intricacy of their rhythm section is extraordinary. But you see them live, and Bruce Dickinson's coming out in some silly costumes, and they've got a 20-foot high mummy waddling along behind them on the stage, and they also don't take it seriously at all. There's something extraordinary theatrical about it at the same time, and it's a lovely mix of stuff to see.
Yeah, I love that. Just the theater of it all is part of what I think, whether people admit it or not, that are in that heavy metal world, and it is sort of over the top, and that's part of it to me. That's what I love about it, along with the shredding and the grooves and the riffs and the drum sounds and just the heaviness of it. It's just fun to kind of watch.
And then obviously the other bit of electric guitar on the record is Joe Bonamassa.
Oh, yeah.
That's a really interesting bit of texture after hearing a lot of acoustic guitars.
Well, that was another situation where there was not a lot of conversation before we got to the studio. It may be a little assuming on my part, just because, again, I've not spent a ton of time with him, but I wasn't really sure what he would play walking into the studio. But I think it's kind of perfect, and it presents what he felt or knows is the strongest version of him in that situation. And I think it really works. And I play with a lot of electric players in Nashville, all the time. And I like that sound of electric and acoustic working together. I'm a fan of all the work that Albert Lee did with Emmylou Harris, back in the hot band days, where it's not necessarily him with the bluegrass band, but there would be elements like that. And just the fact that it's just textures. And I did, that was part of the thinking going into it. That was one where I knew like Blue Night would be a good one, just because it's a bluegrass tune, but it's also, it doesn't follow a traditional blues 12-bar scheme, but it's enough of something that's, can define itself as a bluegrass tune and a blues song. I just think it works. I was really happy that he chose to do that. Again, I didn't know, we didn't really talk about it, but I'm happy with the way it came out.
Well, it's interesting because there's a lot of records Like you think now about, don't know, Sarah Joseph's Blue Heron Suite or Sierra Hull's last record, where people are using essentially acoustic bands, but with some really interesting textural electric guitars, and it's just a lovely sound about it because you get this gorgeous sort of sound world that is the best of both.
Yeah, well, I think about Mike Seal too, who's been out touring with Jerry Douglas the last few years, and I love playing with him. And just another guy that sort of knows what I don't say needs to do, but just what he feels is the right call to kind of fit in with acoustic sounds. And I think what the electric brings, kind of like a dobro, where there's just more sustain, it's just a different kind of voice. Acoustic instruments generally are pretty, pointed, a little less sustain, a little less, I'm not sure what I'm trying to say with that. I would just sum this up and say that it can work. And I think with players like Joe, we're talking about Mike Seal as well, there's an attention to that and an awareness of, okay, this is something that doesn't normally happen. It doesn't fall together like a guitar and a mandolin maybe, or two acoustics even, but there's potential there. And that's part of the fun of the chemistry. Is we're not quite sure how these elements are going to work, but we know it can. And we could sit around and discuss why, but it just does because of the players that sort of know what to do and know what they're listening for. And I think, again, that's what one of the brilliant parts of Joe Bonamassa is. Just, he's shredder, and just a wonderful player, but he's a deep musician as well. And again, just kind of a nerd for tone and amps and pickups. And we just had good comments, just in the studio because he's playing the Strat. It gave me a lot of space down in the low end to kind of think more like a bass player as much when I'm playing rhythm and singing, and kind of be a band for him. And so I enjoyed sort of fitting into his world as he may have felt kind of fitting into mine. So anyway, it was really fun.
I'd love to ask you about kind of one of the really interesting aspects of this record is how you've chosen to put it out. Because we're talking about a record, like there isn't a record yet. There's a collection of tracks that have come. I've heard the ones that are out and a few of the bits that are on the way. But it's very much been put out into the world kind of a song at a time rather than one big dump of an album. And I'm curious as to the kind of reasoning for that. Like what sort of led you down that route?
Well, that's a really good question. And a lot of it is kind of an experiment, sort of a non-traditional way to release what is a project, at least for the world of bluegrass. In my country work, Nashville session player, I see this kind of thing happen a lot. And it happens in pop music more too, with big artists where, there may be a few singles released for months at a time before an actual project is complete. So I know it has been done, but I also know with the folks at Mountain Home, Mickey Campbell and John Weisberger that I'm working with, it just felt like the right kind of strategy. And it's tough to release music these days. What is it? They say 100 and some thousand songs released every day in this world. And there's a certain strategy in sort of creating a series where you sort of gain some attention, and then people maybe look forward to the next one, and then more people look forward to the one after that, and more people look forward to the one after that, and then oh, by the way, here's some new stuff that's coming out in more of a what's called the record down, a few months later. So there's some industry strategy behind that, but I also feel like with this particular batch, and we've talked about a lot of the variety here and the sounds and the players, and it's not, again, just not what you would call a bluegrass record. So there's, in the modern day, there's an opportunity to give the track with Joe Bonamassa a little space, for Joe Bonamassa fans to kind of say, what is this thing? And not just deliver this whole batch where maybe that gets kind of lost in the mass of releasing everything. And when that's part of the other side of this is, there's a lot of songs here. I'm looking at my list now and I can't even see the end of it here. Maybe we're looking at around 20 tunes, 20 some songs. And so there's a lot more. And so I like the idea of kind of at least leading up to the main release that songs have a little bit of a chance to kind of live. And I think too, it's gives, you and I a chance to talk about stuff like this. And part of my goal too was to sort of see this as a logical extension to the first record that came out 20 years ago. And then again, those connections with the Doc and Tony tracks as sort of the bridge between the two. So there's a little bit of a story to tell here with all this versus just saying, okay, here's a large batch of tunes and enjoy it. And so it's, I appreciate the Mountain Home label and their willingness to kind of play ball this way and just see, because again, I had meetings with them, over the turn of last year and like, we don't know, but let's try it and see what happens and see what the reaction is. So far so good.
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. It does sort of give each of these tracks a chance to kind of reach out a bit. You release an album, you share it, all the people on it will share it, and everybody will see it in one big go. But it is a chance for each of these to sort of go out into the world as little postcards in their own right and have their little moments separately.
Yeah, and I think again with the current sort of streaming world, none of this is going away, and hopefully with the release of the bigger batch, that the earlier songs get a little more attention as well. And so, it's a way to sort of, like I say, just sort of extend maybe the life of what this thing could be versus just one main shot.
Yeah. And when do we see the full album, as it were? Is that in the summer?
Yes. The date is August 28th of 2026, with the pre-saves going live July 3rd.
You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah. And that's when what is considered the record now is slated to be fully released.
And you mentioned just again there, kind of harking back to the first record, and there's something I've heard you mention in a couple of interviews. I was just really curious to ask about it in this context. I've heard you say before that you felt at times a little bit like you fell between generations as a musician, that the kind of guys on that first record and the Baylors and the Jerrys and the Tonys and the Sam Bushes were sort of slightly beyond being your peers, but the next kind of batch of, Thiele's and Chris Eldridge and that for a part of your career you felt slightly like you fell between two generations. And I wonder, like now, sort of 20 years on from the first record and 20 years further into your journey, if that feels different as you're sort of coming more towards the mentor side of things.
Yeah, I mean, for where I sit and, my sense of still Sam Baylor, or if Tony Rice were still around, still seeing this generation of players that I listened to as a kid. I think maybe that's the defining feature is who were you listening to when you were 12 years old, and for me, that's what, it was Tony and Baylor and Jerry Douglas and Sam Bush. And so, to find myself touring and on stage and recording with those guys. And because I did a lot with those guys, from like 2000, for 20 years or so, that players that were listening to that when they were 12, and heard me, I'm going to say, assuming that I was maybe the same age of those people, but just sort of, connecting me with that kind of crowd or that kind of sound or that group, which is fine. I mean, I will gladly be associated with that crew of musicians. But yeah, as far as if I were to go down the path of like trying to figure out kind of where I fit in a lot of this kind of stuff, if you want to go there, do feel like, again, it's ultimately it's about good fortune to come out as a youngster in mid 90s with Ricky Skaggs and sort of taken under the wing of Tony Rice, Bela Fleck, Jerry Douglas, Sam Bush, and then influence people that were younger than me. And even though those players that I'm talking about here that were people that I was listening to when I was 12, I'm happy to be, one still around, and especially now as I feel like I'm less maybe sort of performer, guitar picker, creator guy, and more of a teacher. I've certainly done way more of that over the last 10 to 15 years than I ever thought I would. And I really feel right now too, whether you call it a mentor or just, again, a teacher or whatever, but that's where I feel like I am now. And, so maybe I'm over the idea of feeling like I need to like stamp my own name into all this, but just enjoy where I am and the opportunities that I have. And so for that, again, just to keep winding around here, wherever I fall in any sort of timeline, where I am now, I feel like is the opportunity to just, again, be reflective and look to a younger generation and teach what I know and do the best that I can to kind of support the kind of continuing of this craft and this kind of guitar playing. And I see that as more of a more fun, more energy than I do even in kind of performing and playing right now. So,
well, and it must be really interesting putting together a project like this to kind of, particularly once you became aware it was going to be 20 years on from not too far from the tree. Just it is sometimes opportunities to reflect in that way are rare because you're still moving forward and you're doing the next thing, and to have an opportunity to look back at that phase of your career and your life and your development as a musician and a human and all of those things. And since that time, kind of, you've like raised kids and become a teacher and become, a whole new phase of your life. And it can only be fascinating to reflect on that and to be grateful for that bunch of documents of those tunes with those people and those conversations at that time to look back on.
Yeah. Well, that's the gratitude part is huge here of just, if I do straddle some generations, the good fortune of that is that I straddle generations. I'm not limited to one thing or the other, that I get to be friends and still hang with Bela and Sam and Jerry and then, also know Zeb Snyder and Jake Eddy and Sierra Hull and make music with them. And just, again, I think it's fortunate to find myself musically in that sort of environment. And again, with the teaching thing being a big part of what I do these days too. I mean, that really fulfills me. And so, yeah, I'm grateful. I was thinking about this, coming into doing this chat with you today, and just like, that's one of the main things I feel is just kind of grateful to still be around, grateful to still be doing it, grateful for an opportunity to have a new batch of music to put out to the world. But, I don't even think about that as much as just, I don't know. It just seems like it's not, I don't look at it as much like for my career, I need to put out a new record. It's just, it's a different sort of mindset at this point. I'm not really sure how to articulate it other than just, it just feels like something I have an opportunity to do, have had an opportunity to capture and record and make. And it's an extension of that opportunity to just send it out to the world. Yeah. It's a weird sort of place where like, I'm not touring. I'm not going to go support this record with, 90 shows or anything like that, but just, but it is, it's just something to share. And the teaching feels that way too. I feel like I have something to share and something to sort of impart or help somebody with. And I feel gratitude for the opportunity to see that at the end of the day.
And it's a joyous thing for the rest of us to get to share in as well. And I really enjoyed spending the last hour sharing your thoughts on it. It's always a pleasure talking to you, Bryan. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you.
You too, Matt.
Bluegrass Jamalong is proud to be sponsored by Collins Guitars and Mandolins, each and every one built from the sound up in Austin, Texas.